So the reason I have presented so that we can see that all the different aspects of Dharma fit together very well. Sometimes Dzogchen is presented as a completely separate tradition, but in the Nyingma tradition, it's a part and parcel of the full flavor of Dharma. And all the schools of Buddhism point to the absence of inherent self-nature in beings. That is to say that we don't exist as a separate entity. If you take the depth of this understanding, it leads you directly to Dzogchen. So it's very important to, when you do practice, to see how the different aspects of Dharma that you become familiar with can be very helpful. So, for example, you can pray to Padmasambhava for help. That looks like a very dualistic thing, subject and object. But who is the one who is praying? This is an aspect of the ground. Who is being prayed to? This is an aspect of the ground. What you're doing is you're connecting the energy of the ground as it vibrates according to your habitual karmic structure. You're opening it out by bringing it into a kind of harmony or syncopation with the energy of Padmasambhava. This whole world is nothing but vibration. It's nothing but energy. We see people's different personalities. Some people are very angry. Some people are very playful. People have many different personality types, body types. All of that is simply vibration. Different kinds of trees, plants, fruits, all of them are just kind of formations of energy. So if you feel sad and lonely and desperate, you can pray to Padmasambhava for help, but you can integrate that with your Dzogchen understanding. You do the Guru Yoga of the 3R, and then you pray from that state of openness, so that the movement of the energy, which is unimpeded, frees you from locking in to the little prison of yourself. This is so very, very important. Don't think of some things as not being Dzogchen or some things being special Dzogchen. There are no high teachings and low teachings. There are only teachings which you use. And if you use them in the right way, they're all deeply meaningful and helpful. So this is something we want to stay with. Because the key thing is isolation. So when we looked at these three aspects before, there's the openness of the mind, the display, which arises as the open field that we are part of, the subject field of how the world appears to us, trees, buildings, people, and so on. And then the third aspect is our participation in that. And the text say our participation is all-pervading. So how can that be? I feel like an individual person. I think I'm here, but my energy is not different from the field. It's part of the field, and it's part of the ground. So the infinity of emptiness, the infinity of the Dharma Dhatu, the infinity of the Dharmakaya, which is not located anywhere, is inseparable from this arising moment and inseparable from your breathing in and out, from your talking with someone. So each small thing is not small. It's a shining moment of connectivity of this point and that point and that point and that point. So it's very, very important for us. Whatever we do, if you allow your movement, the movement of your body and your speech and your mind to arise in space, moving in space, manifesting and dissolving, there is no limit to that. You're not a small person. People now with fear, with this virus, become very, very small. They're fearful, I will die. Of course you're going to die. Of course you're going to die. Dying is dying. It's not a big surprise. You're born, you're going to die. How will I die? When will I die? We don't know. But how I will die, I don't know, in terms of, will it be a car crash? Will it be a disease? Will somebody shoot me? We don't know. What we do know is that we will die by the easing out of our preoccupation. That is to say, when we die, the 5 elements start to separate. Earth into water, water into fire, fire into wind, and then into space. And the consciousness which rides on wind into space vanishes, and you find yourself into the movement of the bardo. That's how we die. Just as when you're born, the red substance of the mother and the white essence of the father come together, and the subtle consciousness goes into that, and these 3 together start to evolve as a fetus inside the mother's body. So you have coming together, merging, ever-increasing complexity, manifesting, coming out of the mother's body, and then gradually the body loses its energetic integrity, the 5 elements go their separate ways, and the body is a piece of meat which gradually will rot and smell bad. So this is all it is. This is not who we are. This is not the truth of us. The truth of us is infinite awareness, which is never limited, always open, always experiencing self and other arising inseparably. And then moment by moment, we like this and we like that. One of the great aims of Buddhist practice is to overcome the fear of death. If you were gambling and you put all your money and all your possessions on the table, you're probably going to feel quite anxious when the roulette wheel is turning, because you can lose everything. But if you understand that this body is part of who you are, not the ground of who you are, not the secure basis of who you are, but just a moment of showing, it's like an apparition, like a ghostly form, a magical form, then you don't overinvest in it. The body changes and we die, but the continuity lies in awareness and emptiness. Awareness and emptiness never changes. It's always present. Consciousness changes. So it's very important at a time when people become very, very frightened, just to say, yeah, I will die. We should know about death. I will die. And what is death? So when you fall asleep at night, that's a kind of rehearsal for death. It's the falling away of the energized functioning that brings you together. You start to dissolve. You dissolve into sleep. You let go. You release yourself into sleep. And in the morning, you collect yourself into the formation of the morning. Is the person who fell asleep at night the same as the person who wakes up in the morning? Maybe, maybe not. You have to look for yourself. So, the key teachings of the Dzogchen tradition come from Garab Dorje. And he's famous for his 3 statements. So we could maybe look at these a little bit, because it shows us always the central point. So the first one is that you have to open to what is already here. Open to the intrinsic purity out of which you are arising at the moment. So sometimes it's called being introduced to your true nature. That is the outer form. Somebody says your mind is like the sky or like the ocean, and they maybe show you a crystal with the light going through it, and you get some ideas. But what you got was ideas. What we need is the direct experience, and you get that when you sit in your own practice. You're sitting Relax into the out breath and you're sitting. Thoughts, feelings, sensations are moving. So if you want to open to the ground of your experience, the ground of your being, and this flow of thought seems to be covering that ground of being, it's obvious, don't merge with the flow of thoughts. They take you here, they take you there, they take you in all directions. Just stay without merging and without separating. In Tibetan texts, they have it again and again, palamepa. Don't push things away, don't absorb or identify with what's arising. So this is our most basic meditation instruction. And you have to do it again and again by yourself. You're sitting and you find yourself maybe very dull, very heavy. There's no clarity in your mind. You feel as if you're sinking. And you might think, oh, this is a waste of time. What am I doing? The instruction is always, don't try to change anything. You can just increase the depth of your breathing if it helps to give you a little bit more support. But stay present with how it is. Because I hope what you get a sense of today is how it is always movement. It's not stuck. When we feel stuck, that's because we are holding on. We are grasping. We are identifying. But thoughts come and go. Feelings come and go. Sensations come and go. So if the mind is dull and heavy, if you feel burdened, if you feel hopeless, if you think I've been practicing for 40 years, I never understand anything, that's a thought. Every thought arises, stay with the vanishing of the thought. Don't go onto the thought, don't merge into it, otherwise you go away with the thought and you think, what am I doing? Maybe I should do something different. Thought follows thought. Stay present with however it is, and it will change. It will always change because change is what happens to the energetic forms of emergence. This is absolutely central and to our understanding. If the mind doesn't move, then you see that movement moves. Now, the mind is both stillness and movement. So this is very subtle, this differentiation. You could easily tip into the movement, like the reflection is in the mirror. It's not something crude. You can't take a hammer and a chisel and cut into it and keep things separate. Very, very subtle. It's like a ballet dancer having a sense of how they are balanced at every moment as the body is moving. Balance is dynamic, and the movement of the mind is always inseparable from the stillness of the mind. They are not two things. If you put them back to back and say, oh, either I'm still or I'm moving, then you get very, very confused, because then you think, I have to stop having thoughts. Thoughts are not the enemy. Thoughts become like the enemy if you merge into the thought, because then the ego self and the thoughts that are arising have to work out, do we like each other or not? The ego likes some thoughts and not others. So then you're back with accepting and rejecting, sorting out, composing yourself, compounding yourself according to how you feel. So if we go back and look at the nature of the ground, it's uncompounded. So if you compound anything, you're in the realm of ego. You can utilize the movement of energy, but not build on it. You pulse with it. It flows through you. You have an intuitive adaptation. You find yourself harmonizing with the situation, but you don't do it. The one who is doing it, the maker, the doer, this is the root nexus of the ego. And it's overburdened. We take responsibility. That's why in the general teachings in Buddhism, you have a lot of attention to purification practice, into detailed teachings about karma, because you need to let go of all the bad things that you have done. Why? Because you think you've done a lot of bad things. You look at your life and you regret having done that. Why was I so unkind to my dad? Why did I not offer him the kind of friendship he wanted to offer me? Why? Oh, because I'm a bad person. Only bad people would do something like that. That's an explanation. If you just sit and think, this arose in my mind. The potential of the ego pushed aside the potential of awareness. You leapt into this arising thought about your dad. I don't like him. I've never got on with him. And because of that, this formation arose. I don't want to hang out with my dad. It was dynamic. No one did it. No one did it. If somebody really had done it and they were a really bad person, no amount of dorji sempa or purification would remove it. If you have a piece of coal and you wash it every day for a year, it won't become chalk. It won't become gold. It's coal. So if your heart is black, it's not going to become white. Your heart only becomes white because it's always been white, but covered in black. The black is contingent, situational, and it's dynamic. So that understanding, you take it into the Dzogchen practice, you see, the problem is not self, the problem is not the other, it's this glue, the glue of attachment. Okay, so what I need to do is dissolve the glue of attachment. Okay, so now to the meditation practice, and you're sitting and the thoughts arise, and you feel this immediate it. No, you don't merge. How do I not do it? You stay very close, but you don't merge. Open, intimate, but not merged. You don't want to pull back. You don't want to fall in. You're just staying present and open, like the mirror. How will I do that? By getting a sore bum, by sitting for a very long time in meditation, because you don't know how to do it. It's not going to fall out of the sky, because you're learning how to release habits which are not you. The habits create the illusion that this is you. So every time you merge into the thought which you think is important, this is a movement of the mind striking another movement of the mind, which is your habit formation of identification. And these two movements move together as the devil's pas de deux. Now you're dancing this Turton dance. You're not getting anywhere with this. This is shit. And you just go round and round and round. How can I not get involved? We have to relax. Don't try hard. Don't do anything. Be useless. Take retirement. Stop trying. Then you have to trust. This is what is the meaning of faith. I trust that from the very beginning, my nature has been pure. This is the first instruction of Garab Dorji. Open and see that your mind is pure, that all difficulties are contingent. They've fallen like dirty rain from the sky, but the mind itself is pure. So if you see that, whatever is occurring is not me. This is the beginning of freedom. If I don't fuse because I have to fuse, I now have a choice. I can fuse or not. That freedom is important when you stop your sitting meditation. But first of all, you have to learn not to get involved, not to get involved. That is to say, to do less and not to do more. once you can do less and you don't have to, it doesn't feel like a necessity, then when you get up from the practice and you enter into a situation with someone, you receive them and you respond towards them. You're not responding from your repertoire, from your portfolio of your personality. You're responding from the ground towards the situation. And in that way, both sitting practice and interactive practice dissolve the habitual identification with certain patterns of movement as being who I am. Then we have access to all movement. But first of all, we have to see I am empty. There is nothing in me. So we have these famous 5 questions some of us have looked at many times. Does the mind have a color and a shape? Does it have a size? Is it small? Is it inside the body, outside the body? Does it come from somewhere? Does it stay somewhere? And does it go somewhere? We use these questions as a means of observing how the mind is. They're not questions like exam questions. They're more like an encouragement to attend to the details of what is happening so that we see, oh, my mind sometimes seems to be inside me, sometimes seems to be outside me. Oh, maybe it's not fixed. You look again and again and again until you see, oh yeah, it's like this. It's like this. Then you have a confidence that the mind cannot be caught. Movement catches movement. Thought catches thought. Emotion catches thought. Thoughts and emotions catch sensation and vice versa. These patternings of movement are interactive and they build patterns, but awareness itself is not involved. So this is the central way that we find our mind. Mind is the illuminating capacity which is not fixed anywhere, which is not catchable. Awareness is not an object of mind. Your feet are an object of mind. Your memories are an object of mind. What's in your fridge is an object of mind. You can think about these phenomena, but awareness is not a thing. So all the tools and the skills that you have, that you learned in school, that you've developed through your life, that allow you to take hold of situations, to make sense of them, they are useless in the meditation. Because you can cheat yourself by imagining that you got hold of your mind. Most of us do that a lot while we're doing in the practice. We come up with a conclusion. We think, oh yeah, this is my mind. Oh, and then it's not. We were so sure, oh, this is me, this is it. And then it's gone. Oh. Because we associate knowledge, clarity with catching. When you're in primary school and the teacher asks a question, what is 3 times 5? You put your hand up, please, miss. No, I know. Well, it's very exciting. I know something. Ho, ho, look at me. So when you have this attitude that you want to get hold of something, that there is some benefit to knowing, to being important, to having power, to having control, this takes you very far away from Dzogchen. Dzogchen is about availability. Relax, open, receive. The ego is the recipient of the gift or the blessing of the ground. The ego is a gift of the ground. It's not the master. It's a flowering, a showing, a display, but it's not the boss. It receives the energy of the ground and displays the energy of the ground in particular formations. So that's why the more we relax and open and empty, full and radiant, and this specific movement, then we see these three are never separated. They flow together. It's not 1, 2, 3. It's actually an integrity which we only number as 1, 2, 3 in order to get a sense of it. But when you live it, it's not 1, 2, 3 at all. There's no difference. So that's the first point of Garav Dorji. And then the second point is not to remain in doubt. That is to say, not to think about it. This goes back to what I was just saying, that we use thinking as a way of proving something. So when you're in school and the teacher asks you about what's your sense of this poem, and you say something and she says, well, what thoughts led you to give that opinion? How did you arrive at that opinion about the poem? And you start to speak and you join more thoughts together and you come up with a picture. This is what we do. We're narrative producers. We're creating storylines about something. We're always talking at one remove. So this is very tempting. But if you do that, you will lose the very thing that you want to relax into. So not entering into doubt means that you see clarity is intrinsic to the ground. Clarity is the showing of the ground. Clarity is not arrived by having more thoughts. If you have something in samsara, I don't know, say you have to do your income tax return and it's quite complicated, and you have to think a little bit about how you phrase that, or you have to write a letter, a formal letter. You have to be coherent and put your thoughts in a sequential order. That's a conceptual clarity. But the clarity which sees awareness, which is awareness, is an immediate clarity. Immediate means not mediated. It's not mediated through thoughts or memories or big ideas. It's just direct. So if you have a bit of a garden, or even if you're trapped in a flat, you can look out the window, you see the houses, maybe some trees, all of this is there immediately. What you see is immediately there. Then try to describe to yourself what you see. I see 5 cars, one is like this, one is like that. Then you say, now I just see this block of flats in front of me. It's made of bricks. I take my binoculars, now I'm counting the bricks. 1, 2, 3,440, 43,084. Fucking hell. There's a lot of stuff out there. And the more you get into the detail, the more you give yourself a headache. That's not how we do it. That's to apply a conceptual clarity. You draw the curtain, you look out the window, it's all there. It's all there. What is it? It's this. Yeah, but what is it? So this question is so important. What is it? This. Self-explanatory. It's this. But what is it? Then you go into the conceptual interpretation, the analysis, the definition, the liking, the not liking. These, the first form of clarity, immediate, unconstructed clarity, is the natural gift of the mind. It's called Hlundrup in Tibetan. It's the immediate all-at-onceness, which is this. But when you try to work it out, when you try to give an account, to pull it into a story, you add lots of meanings. That is to say, you poison the freshness of the world by smearing on top of it these old ideas and associations, which means that this beautiful freshness offered to you moment by moment in your life, in every situation, is not allowed to touch you, because you make the fresh stale and old and moldy so quickly. by wrapping it in your habitual interpretation. So when he says, don't remain in doubt, means when you find yourself wanting to think about it more, wanting to go back and read a book to check out whether it's just right, then you're going in the wrong direction. You stay with your mind, you open to your mind, you rest in your mind, and whatever happens, you return to that. That is the place where the gold is. If you go into conceptual interpretation, you get lead. Lead and gold are not the same. The shining moment is the shining mind, which is clear immediately. And the more you stay with the brightness of the mind, you'll be more intelligent, more quick, more intuitive, more responsive, just like that. And the more you struggle to think and to make sense of things, you will become burdened by the weight of your own thoughts. Although these thoughts don't weigh anything, when you stack them up, it's quite a burden you're carrying. And then the third aspect of Garabdorji is to simply continue in this way. That means don't look for anything better. One of the key points of awareness is that it is satisfied. The mirror hangs on the wall. If the lights are off and there's no reflection, that's fine. If something very ugly is put in front of the mirror, it shows that. No problem. If something very beautiful appears in front of the mirror, no problem. It's neutral. It has equanimity, evenness. But we tend to establish value by comparing and contrasting. Is this better than that? Is this bigger than that? Can this do more than that? And so once you take this against that attitude and you bring it onto your own practice, you deviate off into exploring other things. Oh, I'm doing my practice every day, but maybe I should read more Madhyamika. Maybe you should. Might be nice. It's a good hobby. Won't cause any harm. But if you're thinking, I need Madhyamika in order to understand my mind, what are you saying? I need to learn ideas from Madhyamika, wonderful, beautiful, deep ideas from Nagarjuna and so on. And with this battery of ideas, with this toolkit of ideas, I will apply them to my mind. There's a problem here. If the flavor of the mind is naked, fresh, open, the image of it is Padmasambhava when he's born. He's like a beautiful 8-year-old boy with little beads of sweat on his forehead. He's just so fresh. Wow. Now, you want to understand this. You want to understand it. Actually, what you want to do is to stand it under your mind. You want to layer your interpretation on top of this. So this is where you go wrong. That's why we say if you're doing the practice, don't talk about what happens in practice. You can, of course, ask a teacher or some experienced meditator if you have some real question. But to talk about meditation is generally unhelpful because it takes the fresh and winds it into the field of the already established. And we have to remember the past is gone. The past is gone. So the key thing is stay with your mind and just stay with it. And don't think about it, just stay with it. Let your mind show you itself. You don't have to show your mind to yourself. That would be too complicated and stupid. Your mind is already there, otherwise you wouldn't have any awareness. Your mind is displaying everything which is going on. It's like the mirror, it's the field of disclosure. So feelings in your body, smells coming from the kitchen, whatever it is, this is moving through the space of awareness, movement through the space. Stay with that. While you're sitting, while you're walking, while you're talking, whatever you're doing. Experience or appearance is moving in the space of the mind. If you stay on the point, you won't be able to think about it. This is a beautiful thing, because if you think about something, okay, I think about my lunch, or I think about what I'll do in the evening, I'm thinking about the past, I'm thinking about the present. So I might think, well, how am I feeling now? Okay, James, how am I feeling? So now I'm looking at myself as an object. I'm coming up with a picture of myself. Okay. Who is this one that I'm thinking about? This is an image, something imagined. It's not the revelation of how I am, but something I'm fixing, like a moth or a frog in a horrible old school. You take the frog and you pin it onto a board, and then you take a scalpel, and while it's still alive, you cut into it to see what's moving. This is not going to work. You can't pin the mind and have the mind in its natural mode. It moves where it moves. It's like the wind. So needing to have mastery over the mind to really know what is happening, it's a false paradigm. You're entering the game in the wrong way. If the game is football, then you don't pick up the ball. If the game is rugby, you can pick up the ball. Every game has its own rule. And the rule in Dzogchen is relax from mental activity. Stay relaxed, open, and present with what's occurring. It may sound very passive. It may sound as if it would be impossible then to work out the problems of your life. You have to go to work, you have to earn money. When you get to work, there are things you have to do. But certainly in my experience, by not thinking about things, they happen. They happen. We have all accumulated a lot of life experiences. These are there like resources all around us. And when we relax, we have access to the widest range of our own resources. But when we get worried, when we think we have to plan, when we try to prepare, we tend to focus in on a narrow arena of the resources that we have that we think will be important for this. So we've already closed ourselves down before we've begun. So not planning, but staying with the spontaneity. Particularly in Mahamudra, they use this term sahaj. Sahaj means simultaneous, that as the situation arises, you arise. If you're with the situation, you're co-emergent. There isn't a gap in which you have to work out, what shall I do, what shall I say, how shall I behave? Because if you receive the situation, if you let the other person's face come right in through your eyes, if the tone of their voice comes in through your ears, you respond. You can see what has to be done. If a child comes home from school and they're looking a bit sad, if you're the parent, you look at the child and you have to, in an instant, you have to think, do I leave them alone? Maybe they need just to settle. Or do I say, hey, sweetie, what's the matter? No, with children, you have to have that sensitivity. If you ask them and they need to hide, that's not good. And if they need to be asked and you let them alone, that's not good either. So you have to find the way to allow the intuitive connectivity to guide what goes on. And of course, mums learn this with very small babies. So it's not a mystical function. It's just that overthinking dulls the world. Too much thinking, it makes everything thick. So in the terms of the 5 poisons, the first is called mental dullness. And it's dull because it's overthought. It's overfilled with concepts. So let's do it. That's a lot of words just now. So let's do a little bit more sitting. Let's do the Guru Yoga of the White Ah again. Okay. So with this practice, we don't do it for a very long period of time, maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes, then take a break, do it again. If you have plenty of time, you can do it again and again. But you want to begin in a fresh, open, relaxed way. If you try to do it from a position of effort, of struggle, you won't make any progress. And in fact, it will make things much worse for you. So we began today thinking a bit about solitude. Now, awareness is solitary. It abides in solitude, but it's not isolated, just as the mirror is solitary. It's singular. It's not mixed with anything. And yet it is the host or the hostess of all the display of all the reflections which arise. Now, the ego is different. The ego is isolated. The ego feels cut off, wants to join in, but on its own terms. And the ego is not solitary. The quality of solitariness is contentment. It's just itself, alone, infinite, settled, peaceful. When we're not in touch with that, when we are separated from that in the delusion of an isolated individual ego formation, then we have no solitude, because solitude becomes persecutory. We become bored. We want something to happen, because excitement and something new and different is the food that feeds into the ego sense of itself. So you can use this as a kind of litmus test to review how you're getting on in the practice. If you can sit very peacefully and you don't need anything to happen, and you're not trying to make anything to happen, and at the same time your mind is bright and fresh, then that's a quality of awareness. But if you find that you're caught up in stories about what's going on, and you become very curious about lots of things, and your mind is jumping around, fascinated by facts and information, then you can observe for yourself how long you've been doing this, and has it ever brought you any real satisfaction? There is no end to learning, there's no end to thinking, there's no end to worrying, there's no end to problem solving. But there is an end to samsara, which is to relax into open awareness, which has been unchanging from the very beginning. So this is what my own teacher tried to show me again and again. And it's quite a difficult thing to become accustomed to really trust that Buddha nature exists from the very beginning as the ground of our being. In Tibetan they say, Ye Sanje, primordial Buddha. This is the quality of our own mind. So if you already have Buddhahood, why would you try to improve it? If something is already perfect and you try to improve it, it's obvious that you're likely to spoil it. If you're, I don't know, if you're cooking some spinach, you don't want to cook it too long. You know, if you have a hot pan, you can cook it in 2 minutes, and then it cooks through, but it's still very fresh. So you have to know, if you're painting or you're writing or you're speaking, you have to know when to stop. That's enough. Same with the mind. If the mind is already perfect, Zopachembo, what do you think your marvelous thoughts are going to add to it? What's the purpose of your thoughts? It's to keep you in employment. The ego wants to exist. The ego doesn't exist, but neither does it not exist. It is the middle way. It is appearance and emptiness, ego and emptiness, self and emptiness, James and emptiness. Whatever form is arising, however you take yourself to be, these formations are always vanishing. They are not final. They are simply of the moment. So don't try hard. In meditation, it's very important not to try hard. But then I'll fall asleep. Why? This is subtle. We have to become used to the subtle. If your mind is crude, if say, for example, you've grown up as a member of a gang and you've stabbed many people and you've robbed shops and you've made people very afraid, then there's a certain crudeness in your mental structure and you may need to soften that. That's all. You just soften it. It doesn't mean you're a bad person, but if you're used to taking out a knife and wanting to stab someone, you have to think, oh, that's a very strong reaction. The person called you an arsehole, and let's observe you. You are an arsehole. So why are you angry to be called an arsehole when you are an arsehole? The person's telling the truth. You don't want the truth. So what do you want with dharma? If you want dharma, get the truth. You're an arsehole. Stop stabbing people. It's not very complicated. Relax. Relax. Whatever you pretend to be, and you may think that's doing you some favors, it's just hiding you from yourself. The truth of ourselves, that we're lazy, we're dull, we get angry, we're jealous, we're selfish, this is well known. It's in all the Buddhist books, the 5 poisons and so on. This is us. The description was there before we were born. This is how we are. We're in samsara. So we shouldn't be shocked. The question is, how do you live with the patterns of your energy, small, twirling, corrupt, unpleasant as they may be, without merging into them and without trying to get rid of them? Normally we say, oh, you should get rid of them. Don't merge, but definitely get rid of them. But here we say, stay with it. If you are selfish, be aware of selfishness arising. And the more you allow the selfishness to arise, the thinner it will get. If you're not aware when you're being selfish, if you want to be selfish, then the selfishness will increase. Awareness is the great thinner. It just thins things, thins and thins and thins. The ego is the thickener and awareness is the thinner. They go in opposite directions. Now, I heard that some of you would like to ask some questions, but I think it's going to be kind of difficult. We never really have enough time like this. So I would suggest we just do a little bit more practice before we come to the end. Meditation practice is quite a lonely thing to do. You have to make friends with yourself as you are. You have to find the way, this very subtle path in which you keep your balance. Some of you may have been out in the Himalayas, walking in the hills, and you come to these areas where the path is very, very thin. It's 0.5 meter wide, and you're against a rock face, and you have to walk very, very carefully. Well, this is exactly the same. We have merging into what's arising and stepping away from what's arising. The middle way is very, very narrow. And so you have to be balanced. And in order to be balanced, you have to be able to feel your body. You have to feel your muscles. You have to know your spine. Your spine is so wonderful. It bends, it moves. The best support for balance is flexibility, because you can make all sorts of subtle movements. You don't have to be gross. And it's these subtle adjustments that you can make in the meditation which allow you to stay with the stream of the arising of experience. If you take a strong antidote, like suddenly reciting mantras or getting up and doing prostrations, it's too crude. You cut across what's happening. So we want to stay very, very close, even to experiences which you feel are horrible. Because, of course, what arises in your mind is, in Sanskrit, it's called santana. It's your mind stream. And in this stream, there are tendencies from previous lives. You may have been trying in this life to be a good person, but you might find that for a while, all kind of strange thoughts come into you, cruel thoughts, vicious thoughts. Why am I getting this? Because when you meditate, you loosen up the blinkers that keep you in the frame of yourself, and there's more scope for these old karmic traits to manifest. So always we say, welcome, welcome. There is space enough. Awareness is space. It's like the sky. There's space. The ego cannot say this welcome. If the ego says it, it's a mark of hubris, of inflation, of pride, and it's going to get crushed. But relaxed awareness can let everything come through, because it doesn't identify with the patterns of the movement as being the truth of itself. The mirror is not defined by the reflection, and you are not defined by what arises in your mind stream. Functionally, your energy of participation is conditioned by that patterning of emergence, but your potential is not defined by it, because your potential is Buddha potential. You are the mind of the Buddha. So we're almost at the end. So let's do another sitting. Oh, we can just go directly into it. Okay. So we come towards the end of our short period today. But of course, we are the very fortunate ones. We have some connection with Dharma. We have some access to the practice. We have some support from Sangha members. And around us are so many people who have no such support. So we offer all the merit arising from this towards all sentient beings. May they be freed from fear, from anxiety, from sickness, and may they come to awaken to their own Buddha nature. I'd like to thank Milton and Joao for organizing the day and keeping everything running smoothly. And I'll be doing a few more of these days, and also some things in the evening from time to time in the next few months. So it's a pleasure to spend some time with you, and I wish you good success in your meditation practice. say.
Deseo suerte en la práctica de la meditación.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you,
Very
gracias.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Grazie a
Thank
tutti.
you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey,
Very much.
James.
good. Oh, have a peaceful weekend.
Cheers, James.
Yeah, peace.
Oh.
Everybody.
Bye.
Thank you so much.